Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. So I wanted to talk about this movie, The Sound of Freedom, that's out there bringing awareness to the heinous crime of child trafficking. And unfortunately, the liberal mainstream media are attempting to tarnish the movie even before, it's even been out there for long enough. It's just very telling. It's very dark. It's very sinister that there's some sort of agenda to deter people from going to see this movie. And that makes me want to go and see even more now. So it just seems like some weird stuff is going on concerning this movie, but it doesn't look like it's working. The good news is that the message is getting out there, and that's what's important. So let's react to some of the craziness that's been going on surrounding this movie, especially coming from the mainstream liberal media.
Crazy conspiracy theories have real consequences.
Absolutely. They're so obviously just absolutely nuts, Donnie. They really just are. Why is it then they continue to circulate?
Yeah, I think particularly over the past year, because with lockdowns, etc., all of us are spending so much more time online. All of us are on Facebook all day, and that's where a lot of this stuff is spreading. But also you can see people have an incentive to push this sort of stuff as well. You see those small dollar donations to Marjorie Taylor Greene, who pushed a conspiracy theory a few years back about Jewish space lasers causing wildfires in California. So there is an audience for it, and you could potentially make a buck off it too.
It's unbelievable to see at this point, Donnie, and sickening, I have to say. Thanks so much for that report. Great work. Terrific work, as always. Sorry, I can't believe it. I'm sorry. They just keep getting more and more bonkers.
That's right. It just speaks to, there are a lot of people who believe it. There are so many, and there are people who you would think would not believe it who do. It's really an epidemic.
There are people who know better and need to know better at this point.
Did he really say people need to do better at this point, when they've just gone on a rant downplaying the reality of child trafficking and what's going on, the reality of it being a billions upon billions of dollars people are making from kidnapping children and bringing them into this most dark world. And this isn't a partisan issue. It really isn't. It's not Republicans versus Democrats, liberals versus conservatives. That's not what this is, or that's not what it should be. Everybody should be for the protection of children. He didn't present any evidence. He's just spewing. It sounds like they're reading from a script, to be honest. It sounds like he's reading from a script. Does he even believe what he's saying? Doesn't sound like he does. It sounds like he's being paid to say that, which is what journalism is today. Being paid to push an agenda, being paid to set the narrative. I can't remember the last time I saw a journalist on TV that was impartial, that was just asking the questions.
With this real wild plot that involves, drinking the blood of children and things like that.
No, he doesn't hide it at all. And you have a lot of people who are in this world of QAnon who say, oh, they don't know what that is. They've never heard of it. They're just asking questions. With somebody like Jim Caviezel, he is openly embracing it. He's openly using its catchphrases and its concepts. He's speaking at QAnon conventions. And this film is being marketed to either specific QAnon believers or to people who believe all of the same tenets as QAnon, but claim they don't know what it is.
And The Sound of Freedom does focus on a real issue of sex trafficking. But that theme, it's sort of like that kernel of truth that feeds the QAnon conspiracy theory. Tell us how those two things work together.
Sure. And the most durable and the most believable conspiracy theories are not entirely false. There's something in them that is true and the rest of it is false. But the believers point to the one true thing and they say, oh, you don't believe that this particular thing is true. In terms of child trafficking, we know trafficking is real. We know it has real victims. No one is denying that. But these films are created out of moral panics. They're created out of bogus statistics. They're created out of fear. And with something like Sound of Freedom, it specifically is looking at QAnon concepts of these child trafficking rings that are run by the high-level elites, and only people like Tim Ballard and only people like Jim Caviezel, and by extension, only people like the ticket buyer can help bring these trafficking rings down. So there's a very participatory element. You're not just going to see a movie, you're just killing 2 hours on a hot day. You are helping bring down these pedophile rings and save children. Now, it's not true, but it's a very comforting and it's a very warm feeling to have.
But this movie is based on a true story. It's not based on, like he's implying, you know, some bogus statistics. It's actually based on a true story. These children exist. They're adults now. So is this how he's going to be speaking when they come out and tell their story? No wonder people don't want to come forward and tell their story. QAnon, they keep pushing that. And he admitted, yes, child trafficking exists. So if that's the case, what is wrong with a movie drawing attention to that? What is wrong with a movie educating people on what goes on in this really, really dark, you know, world? What's wrong with that? Why would the first instinct be to dismiss a movie with, you know, the people behind this story involved in? Why would your first instinct be to dismiss that? Again, I don't understand why protecting children is even up for debate. I don't even understand why that has been politicized. We should all be on board with that, regardless of political affiliations. It's very, very concerning that people on the radical left want to downplay child trafficking. They want to downplay, you know, what goes on. They're trying to stop people from learning about this, the realities of it. And this is a pattern I see with the left. They don't want people to be educated. They want to educate. They want you to only accept their education, what they want to teach you, what they want to indoctrinate people with. Unless you accept their version, their narrative, their science, unless you accept, you know, their doctors, their experts, then you're spreading misinformation. That's a theme with the left here. They want to set the narrative, and anything outside of that is a conspiracy theory, apparently. And look at all these news headlines. First thing they come out with, conspiracy theory, QAnon. The first thing they came out with, even before the movie was even out there for 1 week, before it was out there for like mere days, and they're already coming out with these stories.
Does anybody else think it's a bit suspicious that Sound of Freedom is being called a QAnon-tinged thriller superhero movie for dads with brain worms by the same company that thought it was appropriate to support Cuties, a coming-of-age movie for sexualizing minors? It takes a 3-second Google search to find out that The Sound of Freedom is actually based on a true story of a former government agent, Tim Ballard, who quit his job to rescue a child from trafficking in a Colombian jungle. In the process, he ended up saving 123 people, 55 of which were children. Anybody who has saved that many people deserves their own movie.
That's absolutely... If we're going to reward people for anything, that's what we need to be rewarding people for. That's what we need to be commending. Not commending people who want... who encourage children, you know, to change their sex and nonsense like that. This is who we should be awarding. People who have literally saved the lives of children and pulled them out from a horrible, despicable world of being trafficked. That's who we should be rewarding, and that's who we should be celebrating. But instead, they want to paint this man as some villain. It's disgusting. It really is.
The movie wasn't an ode to himself, a pat on the back. The movie was made to bring attention to trafficking, human trafficking that happens around the world. Human trafficking isn't some partisan issue. We've seen it so much across our southern borders as well. And yet major media outlets are fighting tooth and nail to make this seem like something that people are blowing out of proportion.
And why aren't we concerned about that? Thousands upon thousands of children slipping through the net at the southern border. And this administration is enabling that by not enforcing the law at the border. This administration is enabling that by having relaxed, you know, immigration policies that are allowing everybody in. Some of these children come with adults who they're not even related to. And again, we're more concerned about politicizing it and saying, oh, kids in cages, but nobody was crying about the kids coming across the border with people they're not even related to. Nobody was crying about that.
On the low end, the United States government estimates that around 27.6 million victims worldwide are victims of human trafficking. This is a very serious issue that is affecting millions of people. More people are enslaved today than ever in history.
Exactly. And when you want us focused on the past, correcting the atrocities of the past, and debating all of these issues that don't even affect us today, whose people, who it affected are gone. The people who are responsible are gone. But today, there are slaves who exist, many of whom are children, not just slaves, but sex slaves. Existing today, children being enslaved in that capacity. But we're not allowed to talk about it. Movies, depicting a true story, bringing awareness to it, we're not allowed to talk about it. Or we're going to paint somebody in a negative light for going to see that movie and going along with a conspiracy theory, when really they're going to watch something that's creating awareness to a very serious issue. That's the real epidemic that needs to be addressed as a matter of urgency, as a matter of life and death. So it really just sickens me to hear news reports like that, to see these articles.
On July 4th, the #1 movie in America wasn't Indiana Jones. Disney spent $300 million resurrecting Harrison Ford and releasing the summer blockbuster. But there's another movie dominating the box office. It's called The Sound of Freedom, and it beat Indiana Jones on opening day. The film's based off the true story of Tim Ballard, a former Homeland Security special agent who saved kids from an international sex trafficking ring.
It is the fastest growing international crime network that the world has ever seen.
For Homeland Security, we can't go off rescuing Honduran kids in Colombia.
This job tears you to pieces. And this is my one chance to put those pieces back together.
So you quit your job and you go and rescue those kids.
This movie zeroes in on the multi-billion-dollar human trafficking industry and honors a hero, someone who saved children from sex slavery. But to the media, this person isn't a hero. Someone who rescues kids from pedophiles is a villain.
These films are created out of moral panics. They're created out of bogus statistics. They're created out of fear. And with something like Sound of Freedom, it specifically is looking at Q-Anon concepts of these child trafficking rings that are run by the high-level elites.
For some reason, the entire media is smearing this movie as a dangerous conspiracy theory. The press is saying that the star, Jim Caviezel, is a QAnon guy. And Jim plays Tim Ballard, which is strange because just a few years ago, the same media was celebrating Tim Ballard's heroics. Watch.
Tim Ballard has one mission: to track down child traffickers. 4 months ago, Colombian authorities asked him to investigate a tip that children were being sold there as sex slaves.
Within a half hour, this individual walks up to me, starts asking me what I'm here for, what I want, and within minutes, he says, well, I've got kids as young as 11 years old.
So why is the media warning people not to see a movie about child sex trafficking?
Yeah, so 1 minute, 2014, they were praising him when they had no political agenda, when they had no dog in this fight. They were praising him in 2014, basically just reporting the reality of the situation. But now, all of a sudden, they're slandering him and the actors of this movie.
It's based on a true story. Well, the Spear Fund founder, Tim Ballard, joins me now. So, Tim, why is the media hating this movie?
I can't understand it. The film was made, produced, written like 5 years, 6 years ago, way before anyone heard the name QAnon. I still don't even know what QAnon is. In the meantime, they're trying to connect it to some conspiracy when, in fact, like you said, this is a true story. These are real kids. I mean, these kids are my friends. They're young adults now, the ones that were rescued. They're going to come out soon and tell their story. It's going to be very awkward when the mainstream media comes after these kids next and accuses them of being part of some conspiracy when, in fact, they were rescued from a life of rape. It's the most bizarre thing I've ever seen in the media, perhaps.
I mean, this publication says The Sound of Freedom is a superhero movie for dads with brain worms. and that it fetishizes the torture of its child victims.
So insulting. They have no problem insulting somebody who's actually a hero. They're trying to deter people from going to see the movie for no good reason.
Is that what the movie does?
It absolutely does not do that. It tells a story based in truth. And, you know, what I think is happening, Jesse, I think that the left and these media outlets, they don't want to have a discussion that this film is going to compel. A discussion about why 85,000 children showed up unaccompanied at the border and got released into the interior of a country that is the highest consuming country for child exploitation material on the planet. They don't want to talk about why these same publications are pushing an agenda to change the word pedophile to minor attracted persons in order to normalize sexual activity with children. I think that's what they're trying to avoid, and they know this film's going to shine a light on all of the things, all the atrocities happening to children, and so they have to discredit it by lying about it.
So what would their motivation be to discredit a movie that's trying to shine a spotlight onto atrocities committed against children?
Well, if the truth of human trafficking and child exploitation were to be brought to bear, brought to light, then they would have to have a debate, a discussion that they don't want to have about, again, these policies around sexualizing children or allowing children to consent at a young age to do anything and everything.
Exactly. I mean, they're saying that kids can consent to puberty blockers and even gender reassignment surgery. They can consent to that. What else can they consent to? Nobody's thinking about that. If you could consent to changing your body forever, if you could consent to infertility, if you could consent to rendering your body incapable of doing what it's supposed to do, essentially, then what else are you able to consent to? That's going to be the next step. Because why are we going to have it doesn't make sense, the age of consent being 18 in most states. Not joining the army at 18, being able to drink at 21. Those things don't even make sense when you're allowed to change your body forever, before you've even hit puberty in some cases. So yeah, that's the next step. If you can consent to all of that, you're just going to push the boundaries of what children can consent to. Think about it. And it's a really sinister, sick agenda.
Which would eventually include being, identifying as an adult perhaps and having sex with pedophiles. I hunt pedophiles. I've been hunting them for 20 years. And they are watching this and they're salivating. They are happy that Rolling Stones and The Guardian are ripping on a movie that exposes them. So I don't like the fact that these media outlets are in fact, wittingly or unwittingly, running interference for human traffickers and pedophiles.
Yeah, well, I haven't seen the movie yet, but now I want to see it because this thing made such a splash.
Whose bidding are you actually doing? Are you doing the bidding of people who are there to save children, or are you doing the bidding of people who are there to harm children? Because you want to discredit a movie that exposes these monsters. You want to discredit that movie. Why? And look, these are regular people who are reporting having some difficulties going to see this movie. Make of it what you will.
So, don't know if any one of you have already been to see The Sound of Freedom, but my friends and I just walked out. Hi. And we are curious what your experiences were in the movie theater, because we pre-ordered our tickets, paid for them, they were claimed, got the link sent, and this is an AMC theater in Pineville, North Carolina. Some point today, the tickets got refunded to my friend and we couldn't figure out why. So we come anyways to the theater after dinner and they're like, oh, well, we refunded all the tickets because there's no air conditioning in our theaters. Okay, whatever, we don't care. Are you still showing it? Yeah, you can still watch it. So we get to thinking, why did they not send out a notice in the email saying, hey, we refunded your tickets because there's no air conditioning? And we just are curious why didn't they let us know? There was no one in that theater. There was us 4 and 4 other people, 8 people in the theater on a Friday night. There was air conditioning in the lobby. There was air conditioning in the hallways. There was air conditioning in the bathrooms, not the
That
theaters.
doesn't make any sense. That's
They
crazy.
don't have the bartender or anything in the theater. I smell something stinky, and I think it's shit. Part 2. How many people would continue to drive over? Here's the theater. We're in Pineville, North Carolina.
And you know those places are very hot and humid, the Carolinas, so it's a big deal when there's no air conditioning in the theatre.
Okay. So how many people do you know would actually still go to a theater knowing that your tickets have been refunded to check on your tickets? Not that many people. We did because we're not dumb. And also that was divinely inspired for God to push us to keep going here. To find out what these theaters are doing to keep this message from getting out. I don't care what you think about anything Hollywood. A message is a message, and who cares who the messenger is? Go see the movie, and be damned what your theater tells you if it refunds your tickets. Go anyways.
So my fiance and I just watched the movie Sound of Freedom that exposes sex traffickers, and do you want to tell them what happened in the movie theater?
All right, AMC, I don't know what's going on here, but first off, the AC was out, like when we went to watch the movie, and I'd seen someone else post something too that also saw it at an AMC, and their AC was out, and like as soon as we walked into the theater, it was hot as heck.
I
The
literally
AC
brought a
was out.
sweatshirt and I was like sweating.
And then we realized, like, it took us a while to actually realize it, but they didn't turn the lights off.
They literally had the lights
They
on.
kept the lights on the entire movie.
Who does that?
Like,
They don't want you to see this movie.
they were trying to make it like not enjoyable.
No.
Like they were trying to make it unenjoyable.
What do they think? We're just gonna be like, oh, the lights are on, we're gonna leave. Like, no. Go watch Sound of Freedom in theaters now.
Look, I don't know if this is being promoted by Q-Anon or whatever, but if it's based on a true story, then let that story be put out there rather than trying to dismiss it. I mean, just because a certain group promotes it doesn't mean that they're the ones who are behind it and the movie is false. It doesn't. None of them have actually spoken about the validity of the movie in terms of the story behind it. No one's spoken about that. All they've done is talked about QAnon. Even if QAnon are promoting the movie, that doesn't mean the movie itself, the story behind the movie is false. That doesn't mean that, child trafficking is in a billion upon billion dollar industry and it's not happening right now. The good news is this movie has already grossed over 50 million at the box office, making it one of the top 25 highest grossing domestic films of 2023 so far. The Sound of Freedom has grossed 53.4 million as of Wednesday. Deadline reported, taken second place in that day's box office totals behind Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1's 16 million opening day. After opening in theatres on July 4, Sound of Freedom became an unexpected box office hit, more than tripling its $14.5 million budget so far. In its opening weekend, The Sound of Freedom placed third behind Insidious, The Red Door, and Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. The film places among the top 25 biggest releases of 2023 at the domestic box office, ahead of star-studded movies like Jennifer Lawrence's No Hard Feelings, 84 Brady, and Magic Mike's Last Dance. And, this movie had a reasonably small budget, so I would like to know what would be the purpose of putting this movie out if, the information behind it wasn't true, if the story behind it wasn't true. And I'd like to see if they have that same energy with the victims, that this movie is based on. When they come out and tell their story, are you going to tell them they're QAnon? Are you going to tell them, they're conspiracy theorists and downplay what they went through? I'd like to see if these news anchors have that same energy and are able to say it to their face. Everything that they said there. Absolutely appalling. So let me know what you think. Are you going to see the movie? Are you going to go and see the movie and make up your own mind? So thanks for watching. Take care of yourselves, and God willing, I will see you in the next video.